Good morning, folks. Today I'd like to talk about incremental revenue. And everybody's going to ask, Reed, what is incremental revenue? Incremental revenue is, well, let me give you an example. When I was a kid, my parents had an RV park, and we had other partners. And during the wintertime, it would get really, really crowded, and we'd have more campers than we had spaces. And so we would have all of these campers that'd be lined up outside of our houses, and we were on the golf course, so it wasn't a bad experience for them, but I couldn't look out the window without seeing people looking in at me. I hated it. And I asked my Aunt Betty, why do we have to have these stupid campers parked all around our houses? And she said, Reed, you don't understand. All of the fixed cost for purchase of the land, for the development of the park, all those have already been paid for. The lots have already been developed. We don't have any cost other than water and electric, which is minimal, to have those people around the house. So that is almost pure profit. That's vacation money. When she said vacation money, pure profit, suddenly that made sense to me. Now, I want you to imagine, what is your core product or service? What do you do that's really, really good, and that's what you do most of the time? That pays for your lights, that pays for your rent, that pays for your employees. That covers all of the costs you have right now. Otherwise, you'd be out of business. What do you have that you could do extra that would be incremental revenue? Let me explain. Imagine that you have a restaurant and that you're busy on the weekends, but let's say that Tuesday night and Wednesday night are sort of slow. What do? Could you possibly go to some sales organizations in the area and talk to the owners of those sales organizations, such as real estate companies, such as insurance companies, such as car dealerships, and say, hey, if you'd like to have a meeting on Tuesday nights, I'll give you a special deal. Why would they do that? They're always looking for meeting space. They always like to eat. What happens if you get 10, 15, 20 people coming in each week into a room that would be unused anyway, and they use that for meeting room? What does it cost you? Not a whole lot. What are they going to be buying? Probably each one of them will go ahead and buy food and drink. You get a great deal. What about if you have a restaurant or a bar? What about your menus? Can you go ahead and sell advertising space on your menus? In your public toilets, can you go ahead and sell the advertising space above the urinals? What about if you have excess, if you have a lot of people that are walking by, a lot of foot traffic, let's say that you have a business in a mall, could you have a storage locker facility there? Whatever space you have, is it at its highest and best value? How can you go ahead and get a little bit more money out of that? If you have a cash register, can you go ahead and possibly have a soda cooler next to the cash register? Every time that someone buys something from that soda cooler, basically they're paying twice as much as they would, or 3 times as much as they would, if they just went down and bought in a grocery store. But the convenience gives you something of value. Let's say that you have a dry cleaner. How can you have extra incremental revenue? You're paying rent for 24 hours. You're not open 24 hours. Could you possibly go to every business in a 3 or 4 mile radius and say, do you have any uniforms? I'd like to do uniform cleaning. Go to every restaurant and say, do you have tablecloths and napkins? I'd like to go ahead and wash those once a week. Do they have those floor mats, the welcome mats? They can't wash them in an ordinary washer. You have large washing and drying machines. Can you go ahead and do it there? What can you do that is extra, that doesn't cost you extra? How can you go ahead and utilize all the resources that you have? If you have extra storage space, can you rent that out to one of your neighbors that might need some of that storage space? If you have extra parking space, can you go ahead and rent that out to one of your neighboring businesses that needs extra parking spaces? I was at an apartment complex at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they had these garages that were for rent. Now, every one of the tenants could go ahead and park on the street fine and dandy. But they had covered garages that people had to pay extra for, and those were always full. People will pay extra for something extra to them. The extra convenience, the extra safety, the extra comfort. They'll go ahead and say, I'm really watching my pennies, but for that little bit extra, they'll go ahead and pay extra. Back to the dry cleaners. What happens if you offer an expedited service? If someone needs something right now, can you go ahead and offer that? Hey, if the boilers are still on, we'll go ahead and give you 1 hour service. There's just a 30% surcharge on that. Why would you do that? Everything that you do, you want to ask yourself, how can I offer something extra that doesn't cost me anything extra? How can I have incremental revenue? And with everything that you do, ask yourself, what do I do that is outside of my core business model that I can go ahead and charge extra and have extra profit? Because that is your vacation money.